Hello world, it's Tuesday the 26th of January and we're looking at a soaring weather forecast for Wednesday the 27th, 2021 at Worcester Airfield. I'll start off with the T-fire diagram for Worcester, and we can see that it's a cooler day, 25 degrees. The moisture that I was worried about before seems to have gotten less. There's some cloud at 5,500 feet. There's good convection up to that level. There's a southeasterly wind blowing in at about 15 knots. It looks quite nice. At 5 o'clock, still have convection up to 5,000 feet, less cloud, 20 knots southeaster. So let's just have a look at that cloud. This is at 2 o'clock. We're showing the cloud at Robinson and Ashton. Ashton about 3,500 feet. And obviously all of this cloud south of the Worcester Soaring mountains. Villiersdorp, the ridge at Vic Peak southwards is clear up to the point of the neck here, and there's some higher cloud on the front ridge and inland. There's some interesting high cloud going north from north of Dedurance, just a bit west of Toes River. Zooming out a bit, we can see Swellendam is already perhaps 2,000 feet and eastwards, so there's no chance of getting further east than, well, Robertson, maybe Ashton, but your cutoff to the east is quite close. You can see that this cloud band going up to the north is looking a bit interesting. At 5 o'clock, the cloud has come in. Robertson is now also completely killed off. In the Breda River Valley itself, we're still looking at 5,500 feet, so that's still looking good. And this cloud band going up to the north is still there. Zooming out a bit, that's the only extra area that comes into play that looks interesting. Let's look at the top of the boundary layer, height of critical updraft strength. We can see in the Worcester Valley it's about 6,000 feet. That pushes all the way up to Tulbach, onto the Porterville Ridge, a little bit lower, but still in the order of perhaps 5,500 feet. Inland over here we're getting heights of perhaps 10,000 feet, but remember the ground level is also quite a lot higher. And zooming out, I've got that one. This is dead. This is at 2 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, we can see the Tulbach Valley showing signs of dead spots. The ridges are still working. West of Porterville is also dying. Zooming out, you can see these spots, but we still have this fairly interesting looking band going inland, but it's not all that high, about 9,000 feet. But let's look at the wind before we get ahead of ourselves. It's coming on the southeasterlies, blowing down the Breda River Valley, southerly onto the Worcester Soaring mountains, and further out you'll see that onto Swellendam, but both of this with too much moisture to be usable. Into Tulbach Valley, we see it's blowing onto the Witzenberg, and that's working. The front ridge is working here, and further up onto Porterville is also working. Zooming out a bit, this is all windward but not usable. Up to the north, we've got a windward component all the way up to Tulbach, and obviously on the North Hook Ridge. Moving out to 5 o'clock, we see that this wind is now gushing in from the coast, both in the Breda River Valley and across the plains up towards Porterville. We can see we've got an a leeward flow on the front ridge over here and a windward flow on the Slug Hook and these mountains, which is interesting. Witzenberg still looks like it's working. There are a few corners that are going to be quite interesting. The wind from Robertson is getting parallel to the ridge again. The wind in Villiersdorp to Vic Peak is also coming parallel to the ridge, but Vic Peak itself is still working. Zoom out. We still have a windward flow on the Cederberg. Winds are dropping on the Porterville Ridge, except they've got the southerly flow. Let's go on to the next one and look at some task options. That's Torbach at 2 o'clock, which is looking good. Wind speed a bit lower. 5 o'clock, still working, and this time it's still southerly, slightly southeast, and maybe 15 knots, and convective. Porterville, 2 o'clock, looking good, but up to just under 5,000 feet. Quite a southerly flow. At 5 o'clock, still working up to about 4,500 feet and still a southerly flow. The Dorans, I threw it in just to look at it. It's quite interesting and still working at 5 o'clock, although I wouldn't go there because there's nowhere to land if you need to land out. Series I had a look at, that's 2 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock it's actually looking quite a lot better. That might give you a clue to some of that inland area. Towes River I had a quick look at, 2 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock we see that this cloud is actually affecting Towes River as well. Let's have a quick look at the boundary layer up, down, maximum and minimum. Gives you an idea what's happening on the ridges. This is 2 o'clock. We can see the Langeberg works from Ashton through to Ordenburg, Brandbach. That's the reverse side of Vaihoek, Mosterd's-Hoek. Witzenberg into the corner and onto the Porterville Ridge, front ridge working nicely. Slughook's also working, and at this stage a little bit of lift on the Vic Peak. At 5 o'clock, still working on the Witzenberg, still at Mosterd's-Hoek. All of these corners, Slughook is really lit up, and there's a bit of convergence across the Tilbach Valley. Although the front ridge itself is in sync, it's showing something here. I don't know if that's usable. And some convergence indications going up to the north. Zooming out a bit, I see that this also shows up on the 4 kilometer resolution map. I've taken a vertical, a cross section rather, at the 850 millibar level again, just to see. This is different to what the forecast was for today. We have a normal flow that is onto the Witzenberg at 850 millibars. And at 5 o'clock, sorry, the last one was at 2 o'clock, this one's 5 o'clock, but we still have some flow onto the Witzenberg. This very interesting lift on Slughook and a few of these convergence lines, which may just be a thing on the model that don't actually appear in real life, but there may actually be something there as well if you happen to be around there. So, what are the options? A task to the east doesn't look very plausible. Maybe an early leg out to Robertson. I don't even think as far as Ashton, maybe Ashton. And then going north is quite feasible up to the end of the Tilbach Valley, and you can also cross onto the Porterville Ridge and probably Renosterhoek and a little bit further up to the north. On the return leg, it will get a bit slower in the late afternoon, as we saw that southerly flow on Port of All, the southerly flow in the late afternoon, and the convection is getting a bit less. All in all, it looks like a much better day for tomorrow from today's forecast than it looked like from yesterday's forecast for Wednesday. So thing with gliding and forecasting is you don't place too much confidence in long distance forecasts, because the model does change. And on the same note, we should also just check this model again in the morning to see if there are any further changes. But as it's getting drier, I think tomorrow might even be slightly better than this forecast is showing now. I hope everybody had a good day today. I see that you did actually get a task in and everybody went around it quite quickly. So enjoy that. If you fly tomorrow, fly carefully and have fun. Lastly, if there isn't a task, or if you have a chance to go off on your own, or if somebody wants to set something a bit more interesting, there may be an opportunity to go inland and explore in this area north. Just put it on the cloud map. North of Matruisburg, there's this band and it goes quite far. So that might be an interesting flight if somebody's feeling a bit adventurous. Coming back at 5 o'clock, a little bit of a challenge, because that's 10,000 feet and you've got to get back to Worcester. Have a good flight tomorrow. Fly safely and have fun.